Welcome to my channel. I'm so happy you're here today. Let me ask you something. Can one poor boy with no shoes, no internet, and no help change his whole life with just one big dream? Can a dream really take you from a tiny village to a big stage, from failure to success, from silence to speech? Today, you'll hear a story made to teach you English through feelings, real life, and simple words. Follow this boy's journey, and maybe feel your own English growing too. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Boy and the Dream. In a quiet corner of the world, where green fields touched the sky and the wind carried the smell of fresh earth, there was a small village. Life here was simple. People woke up with the sun, worked in the fields, and slept when the stars came out. In one small mud and wood house with a roof of dried grass and walls that let the rain in, lived a boy named William. He was just 12 years old. William's family had little. They didn't own new clothes, new shoes, or new books. His father worked as a farmer, planting seeds and harvesting crops from sunrise to sunset. His mother sold fruit in the market and cooked whatever they could afford. William slept on a thin mat on the floor beside his little sister. Every morning, William woke up before the sun, washed his face in a small clay basin, and got ready for school. His bag was a torn plastic bag that held his school books. His sandals were too small and worn thin. Sometimes the straps broke, and he had to fix them with a piece of rope. But William didn't complain. The school was far, almost 4 kilometers away. The road was dusty in the summer, and in the rainy season it turned into deep, sticky mud. By the time he reached the school gate, his feet were often covered in dirt. But every day, William walked that road. Why? Because inside him lived a dream bigger than the village, bigger than the fields, and bigger than the mud. William wanted to speak English, not just read words in a book, but speak clearly, confidently, and with pride. He didn't know exactly where the dream came from. Maybe it was the old radio in the tea shop that sometimes played English news. Maybe it was the stories he heard of people changing their lives through learning. Or maybe it was simply a voice deep inside him saying, "You can be more." At school, William was quiet but focused. He sat in the second row, listened carefully to his teacher, and raised his hand whenever he knew the answer. They didn't have much in the classroom, no computers, no internet, and no library, just one old English textbook with missing pages. Still, William made the most of it. He wrote down every new word in a small notebook and tried to pronounce it out loud. At home, when the sun went down and the house grew dark, he lit a candle and sat on the floor to study. Sometimes the candle was so short it burned out quickly, but even a few minutes of light was enough for him to learn a sentence or two. One night, William stood in front of a broken mirror propped up against the wall. The flicker of the candle lit half his face. He looked at himself, straight in the eyes, and said slowly, "I am learning English. I am not giving up." His voice was soft, but steady. Later that night, William stepped outside into the cool air. Above him, the sky stretched wide, filled with stars. He sat on a big stone, closed his eyes, and whispered to the night, "One day I will speak to the world. One day I will help others like me. One day I will make my family proud." He had no map, no guide, and no clear plan. But he had something powerful: hope. And sometimes hope is the first step to changing everything. Chapter 2. First Steps and First Struggles. William's journey began not with big classrooms or modern tools, but with the few things he had: a worn-out English textbook, a half-filled notebook, and his will to learn. At home, there was no internet to search for answers, no phone to watch lessons, and no one in the family who spoke English. If he wanted to learn, he had to teach himself. The textbook had missing pages, and some words were smudged with age. But William treated it like treasure. Each evening, after helping his mother wash dishes and his father carry water from the well, he would sit on the floor with the book in front of him. He traced the words with his finger, sounding them out slowly. Cat, dog, pen. Electricity in the village was not always reliable. Some nights the power was out for hours, but that didn't stop William. When the lights went off, he lit a candle or a small oil lamp. The warm, golden light made shadows on the wall, and his sister would curl up beside him as he read. One night, he tore a piece of old cardboard from a box and cut it into small squares. On each piece, he wrote an English word with a pencil: house, book, school, dream. He read each one aloud and then turned it over to write the meaning in his own language. This became his first set of flashcards. Sometimes he would take his sister's hand, look her in the eye, and say in slow English, "My name is William." She would giggle and try to copy him. "My name is Amir." They laughed together, but deep inside, he knew these small moments were building something big. In the stillness of the night, when the rest of the village slept, William's voice could be heard softly repeating sentences. "I am a boy. I go to school. I like to learn." His pronunciation wasn't perfect, but his heart was in every word. There were days when his eyes felt heavy and his hands were sore from farm work. Some evenings, he wanted to just lie down and sleep. But then he would remember the dream he had whispered to the stars, and he would open the book again. Learning under candlelight, with no guide but his own determination, William was planting seeds for his future. Seeds that no one could see yet, but one day they would grow. Chapter 3. The Exam That Breaks His Heart. One morning, the headmaster made an announcement that sent a wave of excitement through the school. There would be a scholarship exam in 2 months. The top 5 students would win a place in a better school in the nearby town, a school with real classrooms, skilled teachers, a library, and even a computer lab. For William, it sounded like a doorway to another world. From that day on, his focus sharpened like never before. He studied in the early mornings before farm work and late into the night after chores. On pieces of scrap paper, he wrote grammar rules and taped them to the mud walls of his home. I am, you are, he is. He repeated them while carrying water, feeding the goats, and walking the long road to school. The other children sometimes laughed at his seriousness. "Why do you study so much?" they teased. "It's just an exam." But William didn't hear them. In his mind, he saw the city school, the shelves of books, the glow of a computer screen. This was his chance to break free from the limits around him. The night before the exam, he sat with his little sister by the candlelight. She watched him write practice sentences, her small head leaning on his shoulder. "You will win," she said softly. William smiled. "Inshallah," he whispered. "I will try my best." On exam day, William wore his cleanest shirt, washed and dried by his mother the night before. His hair was neatly combed, and he carried his books in the same torn plastic bag. The walk to school felt longer than usual. His heart pounded with each step. Inside the exam hall, his hands trembled as the papers were handed out. He took a deep breath and began. Some questions were easy. Others made him pause, but he tried to remember everything he had studied. He wrote carefully, checked his answers twice, and when time was called, he put down his pencil, feeling tired but hopeful. The days that followed moved slowly. Every morning, William's eyes would drift toward the notice board, hoping to see his name among the winners. Finally, the results were posted. Students rushed to check. Laughter, cheers, and sighs filled the air. William scanned the list quickly. His eyes darted from top to bottom. No name. He read again, slower this time, each line stabbing his hope a little deeper. Still nothing. It felt as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. The sounds of the schoolyard faded. His classmates walked past, some smiling, some whispering. One boy said, "You studied so much. What happened?" But William didn't answer. The walk home that day was the longest he had ever taken. He didn't notice the trees, the fields, or the sky. At home, he placed his bag in the corner, sat in the dark, and didn't light the candle. He didn't eat. He didn't read. His thoughts whispered, "Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I was wrong to dream so big." Then, in the quiet, a small hand touched his. His little sister stood beside him, holding her notebook. "Will you still help me learn?" she asked in a voice so soft it broke the heaviness in his chest. William looked at her for a long moment. She didn't care about the exam results. She didn't see him as a failure. She only saw her brother, the one who taught her words, the one who dreamed. Something stirred inside him. He straightened his back, took a deep breath, and spoke the words he didn't feel yet, but knew he must say, "I failed, but I will try again." Chapter 4. Study. Sweat. Repeat. Failure had hurt William deeply, but it had also lit something inside him, a quiet fire that burned stronger each day. He decided that if the exam didn't give him a new school, he would make his own path. No matter how many times he had to try, he would be ready. The first thing he did was build a place to study. His family's house was too small and noisy at night, so he went outside to a corner of their yard. There, he stacked a few bricks in a square shape, laid a flat piece of wood across them for a table, and used an old sack as a seat. He hung a small oil lamp from a stick in the ground. "This," he whispered, "is my future room." It had no walls, no door, and no roof, but to William, it felt like the center of the world. Every night, after helping his parents and sister, he would sit there, open his notebook, and study under the warm glow of the lamp. He started again from the basics. Simple words, short sentences, reading aloud until the words began to feel natural on his tongue. Sometimes he wrote the same sentence 10 times. "I am a student. I am learning English. I will not give up." One evening, as he sat reading, a neighbor walked past and stopped. "What are you doing?" the man asked. "I'm studying English," William replied without looking up. The neighbor chuckled. "English won't help you here. You'll be a farmer like your father. Stop wasting your time." William paused for a moment, then looked up and said quietly, "I don't need to go far. I just need to go forward." The man shook his head and walked away, but William's heart felt stronger. He repeated his words softly to himself, letting them become part of him. Over time, other children from the village began to notice him. At first, they stood at a distance, curious about what he was doing. Then, one by one, they came closer, sitting on the ground beside him. William didn't turn them away. He shared his book, taught them the few words he knew, and encouraged them to repeat after him. Soon, there were 3 or 4 children gathered around the lamp each evening, their small voices mixing with his. "This is a pen. That is a tree. I go to school every day." It wasn't a real classroom, but in that little circle of light, it felt like one. And for William, it was more than learning. It was proof that even in a small village, with nothing but bricks, wood, and a dream, something powerful could grow. Chapter 5. The teacher who believes the school year rolled on, and the days in the village followed their usual rhythm. But one Monday morning, something new happened, a change that William didn't yet know would shape his life. Their old English teacher had left, and in her place came a young woman in a simple white dress, carrying a small cloth bag. She stood at the front of the classroom and smiled warmly. "My name is Miss Sophia," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I'll be your new English teacher." From the very first lesson, William noticed something different. Miss Sophia didn't rush. She didn't shout when students made mistakes. Instead, she listened. She encouraged. She explained things slowly and made sure everyone understood before moving on. William sat up straighter in her class. He asked questions. He tried to answer, even if he wasn't sure. Sometimes his answers were wrong, but Miss Sophia never made him feel small. Instead, she would say, "Good try, William. Now let's fix it together." One afternoon, after most of the students had left, Miss Sophia called him over. "William," she said gently, "you always bring a full notebook. You pay attention. Do you have someone helping you at home?" William shook his head. "No, miss. I teach myself at night. I use an old book and a lamp." Miss Sophia studied his face for a moment, then opened her bag. She took out a small second-hand storybook. The cover was faded, the corners bent, but the title was still clear. The Boy and the Mountain. "I want you to have this," she said, placing it in his hands. "It's in simple English, but the story is strong. I know you can read it." William looked down at the book like it was treasure. No one had ever given him something like this before. Not just a book, but a gift with belief attached. His voice trembled. "Thank you, miss. I will read it." That night, he didn't wait for dinner. He ran to his future room, lit the lamp, and opened the first page. His finger traced each word as he read slowly. Once there was a boy who dreamed of climbing the tallest mountain. The more he read, the more his heart beat faster. The boy in the story was poor, just like him. People laughed at him, just like they laughed at William. And yet, the boy kept climbing, step by step, never giving up. By the time the lamp burned low, William had finished the first half of the book. His eyes were heavy, but his mind was wide awake. He leaned back, looked at the stars, and whispered, "This boy is me." For the first time, William didn't just see his dream. He saw himself living it. Chapter 6. The Speech Contest. It was a warm afternoon when Miss Sophia walked into the classroom holding a piece of paper with an excited smile. She looked around and then called out, "William, I have something for you." He stood up, a little unsure, and walked to her desk. She handed him the paper. "Our school has been invited to a regional English speech competition next month. Students from many villages will take part, and I want you to represent our school." William froze. "Me? A speech? In English?" Miss Sophia nodded. "Yes. You've worked so hard, William. You don't need perfect grammar. You just need your real story." That night, William could barely sleep. The thought of standing on a stage in front of strangers, speaking in English, it made his stomach twist. What if he forgot his words? What if people laughed at him? The next day, he told Miss Sophia quietly, "I want to try, but I'm scared." She smiled gently. "Good. If it scares you, it means it's important, and we will practice together every single day." And so they did. After classes, William stayed behind in the empty room. Miss Sophia helped him choose his topic, dreams. He wrote his first line carefully. "My dream is to become a teacher and help children like me." Every day, they practiced. Miss Sophia corrected his sentences. "Say, I want to help, not I wanting." She taught him how to pause, how to look at the audience, and how to breathe when his heart was racing. At home, William practiced in front of the mirror, in his future room, and even while walking to school. Sometimes his sister sat on the mat, listening as he spoke. "You sound like a real speaker," she said one night, her eyes wide. The day of the contest arrived. William wore his cleanest shirt pressed as neatly as possible. His parents walked him to the road, their faces proud. The school truck carried him and a few others to the town. The contest hall was huge. Rows of chairs, shiny floors, big windows letting in streams of light. William's hands felt cold. Students from other schools looked confident, some reading from printed cards, others holding shiny folders. William had only his notebook. One by one, speakers went up, some loud, some funny, some with perfect English. William listened, but his thoughts were loud in his head. Remember to breathe. Remember your words. Then came his name. His legs felt heavy as he walked to the stage. The microphone stood tall before him. The lights made the crowd blur. He took a deep breath and began. My name is William. I come from a small village, but we have dreams. His voice shook at first, but he kept going, telling them about studying under a lamp, about failing an exam but trying again, about the storybook Miss Sophia gave him. I want to be a teacher, he said near the end, so that one day another boy like me can stand here and speak to you. When he finished, there was a pause. Then one person clapped, then another, and then the whole hall was clapping. William's eyes stung with tears, but he smiled. He didn't win first, second, or third place, but then the judges announced a special award. For the most inspiring speech, this goes to a boy who reminded us why we speak, not to impress, but to connect. William, as he walked off the stage with a small certificate in his hands, Miss Sophia met him with a hug. You did it, she whispered. You touched their hearts. That night, William looked at the certificate by the lamplight. It wasn't just paper. It was proof that his voice mattered. And he knew. This was only the beginning. Chapter 7. The Letter That Changes Everything. Weeks passed after the speech contest. Life in the village returned to its usual rhythm. Early mornings in the fields, long walks to school, studying under the lamp at night. The certificate from the competition hung proudly on the wall in William's future room, but he knew there was still another dream he was chasing. Months earlier, before the contest, William had taken his second and final chance at the National Scholarship exam. This exam was his biggest hope. If he passed, he would get a full scholarship to a city school with real classrooms, a library, computers, and teachers who could guide him further. If he failed, he would stay in the same school and keep trying on his own. Every day he walked past the school's notice board, pretending not to care, but his eyes always searched for news of the results. Weeks turned into a month, and still, nothing. Then one morning, as William entered the schoolyard, he saw Miss Sophia standing near the gate, holding an envelope with the school's official stamp. She smiled in a way that made his heart beat faster. "William," she called softly, "come here." His hands trembled as he took the envelope. Slowly, carefully, he opened it. His eyes moved across the page, scanning the words until they found the line that made him freeze. He had passed. Not only passed, he was in the top 5% in the entire region. And at the bottom of the page, in bold letters, it said, "Full scholarship awarded. Tuition, books, housing, everything covered." William's knees felt weak. He sat down right there on the ground, the letter still in his hands. His voice came out as a whisper, full of disbelief and joy. "I did it." Miss Sophia's eyes were wet as she said, "Yes, William, you did." When he reached home and showed the letter to his parents, his mother cried openly, holding the paper to her chest. His father, a man of few words, put his hand on William's shoulder and said, "This is your time, son." His little sister jumped up and down, shouting, "You're going to the city!" The news spread quickly through the village. People who once laughed at him now came forward with smiles and blessings. "We are proud of you, William," they said. "Go and make something great." That night, William sat under the stars once again, the same stars he had whispered his dream to years before. Only now he had something new, proof that dreams could grow into reality if you fed them with hard work, hope, and courage. He held the letter close and said softly to the night, "This is not the end. This is the next step." Chapter 8. A New World in the City. The day William left for the city, the whole village seemed to gather at the road. His parents stood close, trying to hide their tears. His little sister held his hand tightly until the last moment. When the bus arrived, William climbed aboard with a small bag. Inside were 2 shirts, 1 pair of trousers, his old notebook, and the precious storybook from Miss Sophia. The city was nothing like the village. The buildings were tall, the roads noisy, and people moved fast, as if they were always late for something. The air smelled of fuel and food he didn't recognize. The school itself was bigger than anything he had seen. Tall gates, long hallways, and classrooms with proper desks and fans. He was given a bed in a dormitory with 3 other boys. The room was crowded, and the noise never seemed to stop. Footsteps in the hall, doors opening and closing, voices calling from outside. At night, he sometimes missed the quiet of the village and the sound of crickets under the stars. The food in the school cafeteria was strange to him, soft bread instead of rice, thick soups with spices he didn't know. Some meals he liked, others he swallowed just to fill his stomach. But in the middle of all this change, William found treasures. The school had a library, rows and rows of books, all waiting to be read. The first time he stepped inside, the smell of paper and ink felt like magic. He ran his fingers over the spines, amazed that so many words existed in one place. Then he discovered the English Club. Students gathered after school to practice speaking, play vocabulary games, and listen to each other's stories. At first, William sat quietly, afraid to make mistakes, but slowly he began to join in, saying a sentence here, a question there. The other students didn't laugh, they encouraged him. And then came the moment that made his heart race, a computer lab. The first time William touched a keyboard, his hands shook. Miss Sophia had told him about computers, but now he was sitting in front of one, the screen glowing with possibilities. A teacher showed him how to open an email account. "Type your name here," she said. The keys felt stiff under his fingers. Letter by letter he wrote his name. Then he typed his very first message. "Hello, my name is William. This is my first email." When he pressed send, he smiled so wide his cheeks hurt. Every night, no matter how busy or tired he was, William took out his notebook and wrote about his day, what he learned, what he struggled with, and what made him smile. And every entry ended with the same line: "I am learning. I will not give up." The city was fast, loud, and full of challenges. But William knew that each day here was another step forward, and forward was exactly where he wanted to go. Chapter 9. Coming Home. When the school year ended for the holidays, William packed his small bag, 2 shirts, his notebook, and the storybook that had started it all. As the bus rolled out of the city, he pressed his forehead to the window, watching the tall buildings fade into open fields. The air grew cleaner, the roads narrower, and his heart lighter. By the time the bus stopped at the edge of his village, word had already spread. "William is coming home." Children ran ahead to meet him, their bare feet kicking up dust. Some called his name, others just grinned and waved. One little girl, no older than 6, walked shyly up to him. She held a small yellow flower in her hand. Without a word, she placed it in his palm and whispered, "I want to speak like you." William bent down so his eyes met hers. "You can," he said softly, "and I will help you." The next morning, William walked to his old school. The cracked walls, dusty desks, and narrow hallways were all the same, but he felt different. He wasn't the quiet boy in the second row anymore. He was someone who had seen a bigger world, someone who had learned, tried, failed, and risen again. Miss Sophia greeted him with a smile that was both proud and warm. "William," she said, "would you like to speak to the class?" He nodded, his heart beating fast, not from fear but from excitement. He stepped into the classroom where he had once sat silently, afraid to say a word. The students stared at him with wide eyes. Some whispered to each other. William picked up a piece of chalk and walked to the board. For a moment he stood there, remembering the boy he used to be, the boy with the torn plastic bag, the broken sandals, and the dream too big for others to understand. Then, with a steady voice, he wrote and spoke the words, "My name is William. I am a teacher now, and I believe in you." The room fell silent. The students' eyes were fixed on him. Then, slowly, smiles spread across their faces. A few clapped, some nodded, and one boy at the back whispered to his friend, "I want to be like him." William looked around the room, his heart full. He knew in that moment that his dream was no longer just his. It belonged to every child who dared to believe that they, too, could rise. Chapter 10. Sharing the Dream. The holidays were short, but William knew he couldn't let them pass without doing something meaningful. He remembered the promise he had made to the little girl with the yellow flower, and to himself. So, one evening, he returned to the same spot in his yard where years ago he had built his future room. The bricks were still there, though worn by time and weather. The flat wooden board that served as a table was cracked, but still steady. He cleaned the space, placed the same old oil lamp in the center, and lit it. The soft golden glow brought back a rush of memories, long nights of study, quiet whispers to himself, the determination that had kept him moving forward. But this time, he wasn't alone. Word had spread quickly. Children from the village began to arrive, some barefoot, some carrying little notebooks, some with nothing at all but a hunger to learn. They sat cross-legged on the ground, eyes bright, waiting for him to begin. William reached into his bag and pulled out the book Miss Sophia had given him years ago, The Boy and the Mountain. The cover was even more faded now, the corners soft from use. He held it up so everyone could see. "This," he said, "is the book that helped me believe I could climb my own mountain. Tonight, we will read it together." He opened to the first page and began reading slowly, clearly, stopping to explain words and letting the children repeat them after him. Their voices rose and fell together, filling the night air with English words that might have once felt impossible to say. As he looked around, William felt something deep in his heart. The faces lit by the lamp weren't just students, they were dreamers, just like he once was. When the lesson ended, he closed the book and looked at them with a smile. "Dreams," he said, "are not just for dreaming. They're for sharing. And now, my dream is to help you reach yours." The children nodded. Some clapped softly. The lamp's light flickered, casting long shadows on the ground, as if carrying their dreams into the night sky. And there, in the same future room where his own journey had begun, William realized something beautiful. His dream had grown bigger than himself. It now lived in the hearts of others.